My name is Audrey Graham. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a digital content magnate. A fancy title that means I built a multi-million-dollar business out of a little spark of creativity. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and my story is about realizing that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. My wedding day was supposed to be a dream. I spent months meticulously planning every detail: the soft ivory gown, the intimate garden venue strung with warm lights, the vows exchanged with the love of my life, Ethan Hayes. I held on to a secret, desperate hope that my family, my parents, Wallace and Eleanor, and my successful older brother, Curtis, would finally show up. They would smile, hug me, and genuinely celebrate my moment. They didn't. Not a single call, text, or card arrived. They skipped my wedding day like I was merely an inconvenient schedule conflict. I walked down that aisle, leaning into Ethan, trying to focus on his loving eyes, but the emptiness of the front row seats reserved for them was a gaping hole in my heart. I was invisible again, but that was years ago. Since then I moved on, built a life, and, frankly, made millions creating digital content that millions of people genuinely love and engage with. Last month, I posted a photo on Facebook of my newest indulgence, a sleek, electric blue Tesla Model S Plaid, fully loaded, valued at over $120,000. It was a symbol of my hard-won independence. I wasn't doing it for them, I was doing it for me. My phone stayed quiet for 4 days. A lifetime of silence, easily extended. Then, out of nowhere, it buzzed, displaying my mother, Eleanor's name. Her voice, when I answered, was clipped and sharp, cutting right through the pleasant hum of my new life. "Audrey, we saw your car," she stated, skipping any greeting. "Where did you get that kind of money? We need a family meeting tomorrow. Be at the house at 7. My stomach immediately tightened, churning with that familiar, sickening feeling of being dismissed. They hadn't cared about my marriage, my business, or my happiness, but that under $20,000 car, that undeniable flash of wealth, got their attention immediately. I knew exactly what they wanted: money, not me. But I wasn't the scared, ignored girl they remembered. I was Audrey Graham, the CEO who had just sold her company for $18 million. I had a plan, something they would never see coming, a way to turn their naked greed against them and finally, truly, walk away free. If you've ever had a family member ignore your big moments until you achieved financial success, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me know I'm not alone in sharing these tough stories. I'd also love to hear your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Let's talk about the pain of being overlooked. The golden child and the ghost. I grew up in a quiet, picture-perfect two-story brick house in a middle-class suburb of Madison. My father, Wallace, was a meticulous insurance agent, spending his evenings glued to sports. My mother, Eleanor, was the administrative assistant who ran the household with the efficiency of a drill sergeant. But the real focus of the home, the undeniable star, was my brother Curtis. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. He excelled at football and aced his exams with minimal effort. Today, he's a successful corporate lawyer, but even back then, he commanded the spotlight. And me? I was the younger sibling, always reaching for their attention, only to grasp at empty air. I was shouting into a void. I was only 8 years old when the blatant favoritism first truly settled in my bones. When Curtis's middle school football team won a minor championship, my parents hosted a massive backyard barbecue for 50 people. The lawn was covered in streamers, there was a professional sheet cake, and my father, Wallace, beamed as neighbors clapped Curtis on the back. "That's my boy," he'd boast, puffing out his chest. I stood by the picnic table, clutching a warm can of soda, wearing a new dress I was proud of, silently hoping anyone, would notice me. No one did. A year later, I poured my heart into the school play, landing the lead role. I rehearsed for weeks, memorizing lines and choreography, fueled by the imagined image of my parents watching from the audience. On opening night, I peeked out through the curtain, scanning the darkened seats. They were empty. Curtis had a major math test the next morning, and Mom said they needed to stay home to help him study for his future. I performed anyway, blinded by the stage lights but utterly hollow inside. Curtis's high school graduation was, predictably, a spectacle. They rented a banquet hall, invited half the town, and Dad gave a tearful speech about how proud he was of Curtis's law school scholarship. I, then only 14, sat quietly in a corner, fiddling with my dessert. That very same morning, I had won a statewide essay contest and brought home a heavy, shiny plaque, an actual, tangible award that required intellectual achievement. I showed it to Mom, expecting it to be pinned to the fridge with magnetic fanfare. She glanced at it, offered a faint, rushed smile, and said, "That's nice, honey," before rushing back to check on the catering. The plaque ended up on my dresser, where it gathered dust, completely eclipsed by the gleaming row of Curtis's trophies that lined the living room mantel, polished like sacred treasures. My artwork, my report cards full of straight A's, even a regional poetry award, none of it ever made it past my bedroom door. One Christmas, Curtis received a gleaming top of the line red mountain bike with a huge bow. I received a woolen sweater that was 2 sizes too big. "You'll grow into it," Audrey Mom said, already distracted by Curtis's delighted shrieks. Once, I finally mustered the courage to ask Dad why they never attended my competitive debate tournaments. He frowned, irritated by the interruption, and muttered, "We're busy, Audrey. Curtis has college applications, and those things are far more important." I swallowed the lump in my throat and retreated to my room, accepting the hard truth that my achievements were merely distractions from Curtis's ascent. The worst was my 16th birthday. I had dropped obvious hints for weeks, dreaming of a surprise, a dinner out, anything to show they cared. I woke up early that morning, put on my favorite dress, and sat at the kitchen table waiting. Mom rushed Curtis off to an all-important law school interview preparation session. Dad remained glued to his phone, dealing with a major client. By dinner, the devastating truth hit me. No one had even said, "Happy birthday." Curtis came home late, full of stories about his interview performance, and they all laughed over takeout pizza. I ate alone in my room, the silence a deafening roar of neglect. It wasn't just the huge milestones. It was the chronic low-level dismissal. Mom always asked Curtis about his day first. Dad always found time to attend Curtis's intramural sports games, but never once asked about my elaborate school projects. To the neighbors, Curtis was the pride of the family, the future lawyer. Me, I was just the other kid. A neighbor once asked Mom about me, and she simply replied, "Oh, Audrey's fine, she's quiet, keeps to herself." That casual dismissal cut deeper than any sharp words or outright absence, making me feel like an irrelevant shadow in my own home. The spark of escape. Curtis himself wasn't overtly cruel, he was simply oblivious. He'd toss me a brief, half-hearted good job when I brought home straight A's, but it always felt like pity, the kind of token gesture you offer a persistent underdog. He was too busy basking in the relentless spotlight to ever notice I was fading into the shadows. When his wife, Jessica, joined the family, she fit right in, showering him with effusive praise and hosting lavish dinners to celebrate his latest corporate promotion. Later, when their twins, Skylar and Noah, were born during my college years, every family conversation revolved entirely around them. I existed only when I was useful, usually for last-minute babysitting so Curtis and Jessica could attend black tie galas. I tried to rationalize it all away. Maybe my parents thought Curtis needed their constant validation because of his grand ambitions and larger-than-life ego. Maybe they assumed I was fine because I never complained or threw a tantrum. But I wasn't fine. Every missed moment, every distracted nod, chipped away at my self-worth until I felt thin and brittle. After turning 16, I stopped looking to them for validation entirely. Instead, I turned inward. I started journaling late at night, pouring out the accumulated hurt of the neglected play, the ignored essay contest, and the forgotten birthday. But more than just pain, I started sketching out video ideas in notebooks. I watched early YouTube creators build audiences from nothing, and for the first time, a powerful spark ignited inside me. I realized I didn't need my family's approval to shine. I could create something of my own, a world they couldn't ignore, a success they couldn't diminish. That yearning for acknowledgement pushed me onto my own, solitary path. Amid the shadows of being overlooked, I found my true escape: art class. My high school offered a multimedia art elective, and I signed up on a whim. The first day, my art teacher, Miss Vivian Reed, stood at the front of the room, holding up a clunky old camcorder. "Art isn't just paint and canvas," she declared, her eyes bright. "It's storytelling, and today, you are the storytellers." That was the moment the switch truly flipped. Ms. Reed introduced us to short-form video clips. Clips under 3 minutes designed to capture a fleeting feeling or an intense idea. I was instantly hooked. I saw a way to finally say something, to communicate my inner world without needing my parents' permission or approval. I borrowed the school's archaic camera and started filming random moments: leaves falling in the park, the worn pavement beneath my sneakers, even the frantic, joyful chaos of my dog chewing a squeaky toy. I'd stay up late, piecing the clips together on free, clunky editing software, fumbling through online tutorials. It was messy, crude work, but it felt entirely and fiercely mine. Ms. Reed noticed. She pulled me aside after class one day. "Audrey, you have an eye for this," she said, pointing to a simple, shaky clip I'd filmed of rain streaking down a window pane. "There's a local video contest for teens. You should enter." I hesitated. Years of my family brushing off my efforts had instilled a profound fear of exposure. But her steady confidence made me think, maybe I could actually do this. She helped me refine a 1-minute video. A montage of Madison's quiet, overlooked moments: streetlights flickering, kids laughing at an empty bus stop, a stray cat darting through a lonely alley. I called it Small Things, pouring every ounce of the silent emotion I'd stored up into its frames. The contest was held at the community center, a small, forgettable affair. I spent the week obsessing over every cut and transition. I mentioned it to Mom over dinner, my voice tight with fragile hope. "It's a big deal," I managed, sliding the flyer across the table. She merely glanced at it. "Curtis has a mock trial this weekend, so we're completely swamped, Audrey," she dismissed. My heart sank, but I pushed the pain away, asking Dad later. "Got a work thing," he mumbled, not looking up from his newspaper. Curtis just shrugged, already engrossed in his phone. I went anyway. Alone. The night of the contest, I sat in the back, clutching my program. When Small Things came up, the room went quiet. A close-up of dew on grass, a slow pan of a frozen lake, all tied together by a piece of melancholy music I'd found online. When it ended, the room erupted in genuine, loud applause. I felt a surge of energy. I had finally said something worth hearing. "First place, Audrey Graham!" the judge called. I stumbled to the stage, gripping the small trophy. Strangers congratulated me, but my eyes were scanning the crowd, desperately searching for two faces. The seats remained empty. I walked home that night, the cheap trophy heavy in my hand. The high of victory faded fast. The next morning, my family didn't even ask about it. Mom was busy praising Curtis's mock trial win. Curtis tossed me a casual, "Cool, Audrey," when I showed him the trophy, treating it like a piece of insignificant junk. I wanted to scream to make them finally see my worth, but I didn't. Instead, I went to my room, opened my laptop, and started editing again. If they wouldn't notice me, I vowed, I would make the world notice me. That was the day I started my YouTube channel. I called it Audrey's View. I uploaded Small Things, expecting maybe 10 views. By the end of the week, it had 100. Comments trickled in, strangers saying they loved the vibe, the way I captured tiny perfect moments. One person wrote, "This feels like home." I read it over and over, my chest tight with a new feeling: pride. I wasn't invisible to them. I kept going, posting more clips. My channel grew slowly: 200 subscribers, then 500. It wasn't viral fame, but it was mine. Every like, every comment, felt like a deliberate nod from someone who truly saw me. I tried one last time to show Mom a video that hit 1,000 views. "That's neat," she said flatly, already turning to answer Curtis's phone call. The hurt still landed, but I was done begging. I had found something better: a way to connect, to create, to build something they could never take away. That first contest, that little trophy, those early subscribers, they were the proof that I was more than the child my family had forgotten. I carried that purpose into college, fueled by a partial scholarship and relentless part-time work at a campus coffee shop. My parents didn't offer a dime. They were too focused on funding Curtis's prestigious law school program. But I didn't need their help. I was chasing a future that was mine alone. My late nights were now dedicated to my channel, Audrey's View, where I posted vlogs and editing tutorials that began to pull in views and subscribers. In my third year, my communications professor, Professor Ben Carter, recognized my talent. He was intense, demanding, but saw the soul in my work. He invited me to join a national digital content competition backed by a major media company. I led a team of 4, pitching a series of short mental health awareness videos. We won first place and a $10,000 prize. At the awards ceremony, holding the glass trophy, I called Mom one last time. "Nice job, Audrey," she said distractedly. "Your brother's closing a big case this week." I hung up, gripping the trophy tighter. The validation was now strictly external. After graduation, I went all in. I incorporated freelancing for local Madison businesses while growing Audrey's View. My channel hit 50,000 subscribers, enough to monetize seriously. Then, one video, a breakdown of how to film a high-quality viral clip, exploded to over 100,000 views. I had a vision, a studio focused entirely on short-form content for brands. I called it Horizon Digital. Starting it was grueling endless pitches, living on ramen, my bank account on life support. But at a tech conference, I pitched to a sharp-eyed investor named Vivian Chen. She flipped through my portfolio, leaned forward, and said, "Audrey, your work cuts through. Let's make it happen." Vivian invested $200,000. I was stunned that a complete stranger believed in me when my own parents never had. Horizon Digital took off. We landed bigger and bigger clients, rapidly building a following of over 1 million across various platforms. Our revenue climbed into 7 figures. When a major streaming platform approached us with an acquisition offer, I knew my life was about to change forever. After months of intense negotiation, I signed the deal for $18 million. The first thing I did was pay off all my student loans. The relief was overwhelming. I was free, no debt, no limits. I had built an empire from a single camera and a notebook full of overlooked dreams, proving definitively that I didn't need my family's approval to succeed. They hadn't reached out in years, ignoring my company, my success, and my wedding, but my moment of reckoning with them was still to come. After selling Horizon Digital for that life-changing sum, I didn't stop working, but the frantic urgency was gone. I had stability. And then I met Ethan Hayes. We met at a coffee shop in Madison where I was buried in editing one of my last client projects. He was at the counter, a mechanical engineer by trade, steady, practical, but with a wonderfully warm, quiet confidence. His flannel sleeves were rolled up, and his smile made me pause. We started talking about work, life, and Madison's brutal winters. By the end of that chat, I knew I wanted to see him again, not because of what he could do for my business, but simply because he saw me. We started dating, stealing moments between my late-night edits and his long shifts. Ethan was my anchor. He'd bring me takeout during insane deadlines, and I'd drag him to art fairs, laughing when he'd patiently fake understanding my industry rants. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not just for my ambition or my utility, but for the messy, passionate, often exhausted person I was. A year later, Ethan proposed. It was beautifully simple, just us on a park bench by the shimmering lake, the place where I had filmed so many of my early, hopeful videos. He pulled out the ring, his hand steady, and said, "Audrey, you're my home. Marry me." My heart raced, picturing a future free from the constant need to prove myself. I said yes, immediately and unequivocally. Planning the wedding was a whirlwind of joy mixed with a familiar, deep-seated anxiety. We picked a small, elegant garden venue with string lights, perfect for a summer evening that felt intimate and real. I chose a soft ivory gown, feeling like the woman I'd fought so hard to become. Despite everything, I had to try one last time. I sent personalized invitations to my father Wallace, my mother Eleanor, and my brother Curtis. I even called Mom, my voice tight with a mixture of hope and fear. "It's my wedding, Mom," I said. "Will you and Dad be there?" She paused. I could hear the hesitation, the calculation on the other end of the line. "Well, we'll try, Audrey," she said, her tone already dismissive. "Curtis has a critical deposition scheduled that week. We'll see." My stomach tightened with the familiar knot of rejection, but I kept planning, telling myself that it truly didn't matter anymore. The wedding day arrived, beautiful and sun-drenched. I stood before the mirror, adjusting my veil, my nerves buzzing with excitement, but beneath that, a profound sadness lingered. Ethan squeezed my hand, whispering, "You are breathtaking." I walked down the aisle, my gaze locked on his, and for a glorious moment, the world shrank down to just the two of us, and the promises we were making. But as I glanced at the seats reserved for my birth family, my heart splintered. They were empty. No dad, no mom, no Curtis. Not a call, not a text, not a single congratulatory card had arrived. They had held out hope until the very last second, and they had failed. They had skipped the most important day of my adult life. The ceremony went on. Vows, tears, applause. But their absence was a jagged piece of glass in the beautiful mosaic of the day. Ethan's family immediately filled the gaping void. His parents, warm, loud, and full of genuine affection, pulled me into fierce hugs, welcoming me into their fold. His sister took charge of the dance playlist, making sure everyone, even the most reserved relatives, was on the floor. At the backyard reception they hosted, Ethan's father raised a glass. "To Audrey and Ethan," he boomed. "Here's to family. And to the beautiful life you'll build together." My throat tightened, torn between the overwhelming gratitude for their love and the sharp, throbbing pain of my own family's profound coldness. Their warmth didn't heal the bruise of my parents' rejection, it only illuminated how deep the neglect had gone. I had spent years desperately chasing my parents' approval. And here was a family who embraced me fully, without condition. The bait is set, we built our life together, stable and content. We bought a small, beautiful house in a quiet Madison neighborhood. Ethan was my immovable rock, celebrating every one of my successes and holding me steady through any business hiccup. His family became my family, weekly Sunday dinners, holidays filled with genuine laughter, and constant, easy check-ins. Their unwavering support was everything I had yearned for as a child. But the silence from my parents persisted. They didn't just miss my wedding, they acted as if it never happened. I sent them a selection of professional photos, hoping for some acknowledgement, a sliver of connection. Nothing. I called Mom once, asking if she'd seen the album. "It's lovely, dear," she said, before immediately pivoting to an update on Curtis's twin children, Skylar and Noah. I stopped reaching out. Then came the final, massive financial hurdle, paying off all my accumulated debt. The $18 million from the acquisition had finally cleared, and I paid every last loan. The relief washed over me like a cleansing wave. I was financially free. To celebrate this monumental liberation, I splurged on a symbol of my absolute independence, that electric, blue Tesla. It represented years of grueling work and the successful fight to define my own worth. I parked it proudly in the driveway. A silent, the gleaming testament to the fact that I didn't need their permission or their funds to thrive. I posted a photo of the car on my professional Facebook page. It wasn't a taunt, it was a simple moment of pride, a shareable victory. My parents and brother hadn't contacted me in years. Ignoring my million-subscriber channel, my multi-million-dollar business, and my marriage, I truly expected the photo to sink into the digital abyss like everything else I had ever shared. But that Tesla photo, that single image of undeniable, visible wealth, finally broke their years of calculated silence. The call and the command. A full week passed after I posted the picture. The silence, I thought, would hold. But then my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "We need to talk, Audrey," she said, her voice clipped, utterly formal, sounding exactly like she was scheduling an emergency dentist appointment. "Can you come to Madison? The house. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. I froze, the phone heavy in my hand. Years of cold silence, broken only by the sight of a luxury car. Ethan, sitting beside me, sensing the sudden tension, placed a protective hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to go," he whispered, his concern palpable. But I knew I did. This wasn't an invitation, it was a final summons. I had to face them, not out of duty, but to finally deliver the closure I had been denied for years. This was my opportunity to reclaim my narrative and deliver the truth I'd held back for decades. The drive back to my childhood home felt endless. I gripped the leather steering wheel of the very car that had instigated this meeting. Rehearsing the carefully measured words, I knew I had to speak. Ethan offered to come, but I told him no. This confrontation was mine alone. I had to walk into that arena and leave the past there. I pulled up to the familiar two-story brick house. It looked exactly the same, but to me, it felt like an alien structure, a monument to emotional neglect. My father Wallace opened the door. His face was neutral, carefully composed. "Good to see you, Audrey," he said, as if I had merely been delayed by traffic. My mother, Eleanor, was in the living room, setting out a formal coffee service, an obvious attempt at civility. Curtis sat on the gray sectional, scrolling dismissively through his phone. No hug, no acknowledgement of my marriage. The air was thick, suffocating. We moved to the dining room table, the very table where I had once begged for their attention on my 16th birthday. Mom started, her voice unnaturally warm, forced. "Audrey, we saw your car. You've obviously done very well for yourself. We're very proud." I nodded slowly, waiting for the inevitable hook. Curtis leaned forward, cutting through the pleasantries with the efficiency of the corporate lawyer he was. "Let's be direct, Audrey. Skylar and Noah need help with college planning," he stated, referring to my niece and nephew. "Tuition is steep now, and I'm deeply underwater with my current mortgage. The interest rates are brutal." Dad chimed in, his tone matter of fact, utterly devoid of any recognition of our years of estrangement. "Family steps up, Audrey. That's how it works. You've got the means now. We're asking you to help Curtis secure their future." I stared at the three of them, my pulse racing not with panic, but with a cold, powerful clarity. They hadn't called in years, hadn't attended the defining day of my life, but now they saw dollar signs and were invoking the sacred name of family. I took a deep, steadying breath. My voice, though low, was sharp enough to pierce the forced silence. "You want to talk about family?" I asked. "Fine. Where were you when I got married? When I walked down that aisle, looking for you? When I needed a call, a text, a simple card? Where was the family then?" Mom visibly shifted, her eyes darting to the floor. "We were busy, Audrey. Curtis had his case." I let out a bitter, cutting laugh. "Busy? You were busy for my entire life. My school plays, my contests, my college graduation, my first business success. You were never there. But now you see a luxury car, and suddenly I'm supposed to be the family's financial solution." Oh, Curtis rolled his eyes, resorting to his standard dismissal. "Don't be dramatic, Audrey. We're just asking for help for the kids." Dad nodded. "You've got millions. What is a little bit for your niece and nephew? It's just helping family." Their words landed like small, ugly punches, but I was done shrinking. "I built my life without you," I said, my voice rising, fueled by decades of suppressed frustration. "I won awards, I started a company, I sold it for 18 million, all while you were cheering for Curtis's every half step. You didn't even send a card for my wedding." Mom's face tightened with weak indignation. "We meant to, dear," she whispered. "Meant it doesn't cut it," I snapped. "You chose him over me every single time, and now you think I owe you a handout." The room fell into a quiet, stunned silence. Their faces were a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning guilt. Curtis muttered, "You're being utterly selfish." I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the wooden floor. "Selfish," I said. "I spent years trying to be enough for you. I'm done. I'm through." The 15 million answer I had planned this next move weeks ago, the moment Mom's calculating call came in. I'd kept it quiet, even from Ethan, because the impact had to be utterly devastating and final. "You think I'm sitting on that money for myself?" I said, pulling a folded, official-looking press release from my bag. "No, I'm not." I slid the papers across the table. They were stamped with the logo of a major, National Children's Education Foundation. "I've donated the vast majority of my fortune," I announced, my voice clear and ringing in the silent room. 15 million to a children's education charity. It's funding scholarships for high school students who are talented and driven but have been overlooked. Kids who don't have anyone in their corner. I met Curtis's stunned gaze. This is what family means to me now. Helping people who genuinely need it, not people who ignored me until they saw dollar signs and a six-figure car. Mom's hands shook violently as she read the headline, 15 million. She whispered, the number stealing the breath from her lungs. Dad's face went scarlet with rage. You're throwing it away! You could have set up your niece and nephew for life. Curtis slammed his fist on the table. That was our money, Audrey! You owe us! I met his eyes, utterly unflinching. You set them up, I said simply. I did this for kids who don't have a safety net. You had your chance to be my family. You chose not to be, you lost it. I turned to leave, my heart pounding, but lighter than it had been since childhood. As I reached the door, Mom's voice broke, catching me. Audrey, wait! She cried out. We're sorry! We didn't know how much we hurt you! I paused at the threshold, not turning back, knowing that to face them was to invite their manipulative pleas. You knew, I said quietly, the finality absolute. You just didn't care. I stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind me. The weight of their neglect didn't vanish instantly, but I felt free. Free from obligation, free from expectation, free from the crushing need for their approval. I drove away from that familiar brick house, thinking not of them but of Ethan, his parents, and the life we had built. The $15 million donation wasn't just a powerful statement, it was my final act of turning pain into profound purpose. News of the donation spread fast, hitting the local papers and the national digital scene. My phone buzzed with messages from strangers thanking me, calling me an inspiration. I didn't need my family's pride anymore. I had built something bigger than their rejection, and I wasn't looking back. The true cost of neglect after the family meeting. I walked away with a profound sense of closure. Cutting ties with family is never easy. It felt like carving out a piece of myself. But it was an absolute necessity. I immediately blocked my parents' and brothers' numbers and deleted all digital connections. I was done chasing their approval, ready to focus on the life Ethan and I had built, and the purpose I had found in philanthropy. The consequences for my birth family were swift and severe. Through mutual friends, I learned that my brother, Curtis, couldn't keep up with the overwhelming mortgage payments he had mentioned. The bank foreclosed on his house. He was forced to move Skylar and Noah into a cramped, small apartment. The weight of his own financial mismanagement and grandiosity had finally crushed him. My parents, Wallace and Eleanor, also felt the impact. They had been secretly banking on my money, or Curtis's eventual wealth, to secure their retirement. With both sources gone, they were stuck working extra years, taking on grueling side jobs to cover bills and expenses that should have been managed years ago. A pang of sympathy occasionally hit me, thinking of my niece and nephew caught in the crossfire. But I had to remind myself, I had offered them love and gifts for years, and they, directed by their parents, had always kept me at a distance. I could not, and would not, fix my family's choices anymore. Ethan remained my immovable rock. You did what you had to, Audrey, he'd say, holding my hand over coffee on our porch. You are not responsible for them. He was right. I had spent my life trying to earn a place in a family that had shown me precisely where I stood. Cutting them off wasn't about spite. It was about protecting my peace and my emotional survival. The true healing came not from the money, but from the purpose I had bought with it. I focused relentlessly on the children's education foundation I had funded. I started volunteering, mentoring bright kids who reminded me of my own younger self, hungry for a chance, but utterly overlooked. One high school girl, Mia, dreamed of being a filmmaker. I spent weekends teaching her how to edit, watching her eyes light up as she cut her first short video. You're amazing, Audrey, she said once, hugging me tightly. Those words hit harder than any award I had ever won from a distant, cold committee. They were genuine, warm, and proof that I was making a real difference. The community became my anchor. I spoke at local schools, sharing my story of building a multi-million-dollar career from nothing. Parents and children approached me afterwards, saying I had inspired them to chase their dreams and, crucially, to stand up for themselves. My work was no longer about views or money, it was about lasting, human impact. Looking back, the essential lesson is clear, and it's one I share with everyone. Especially those of you who have spent a lifetime putting family first only to be betrayed. Your worth doesn't come from your family's approval. It comes from within, from the choices you make, and the people you lift up. I had felt invisible, always second to Curtis. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had built a career, a marriage, and a purpose, all without them. Cutting them off wasn't just closing a door, it was opening my life to true, unconditional love. I didn't need their apologies or their hollow pride. I had found my own. I still think about them sometimes, wondering if they ever truly understood what they lost. But I don't dwell on it. I spent too long waiting for them to change. Now, I am living for me, for Ethan, and for the Mayas of the world who desperately need someone to believe in them. My story isn't about their rejection anymore. It is about my strength, my choices, and the boundless power of my own heart. To everyone watching, thank you for following my journey. It's been raw, real, and hard to share. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to draw a difficult boundary with family or fight for your own self-worth and financial independence, please hit that like button and share this story. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to keep sharing these real life stories of resilience and self-reliance. Tell me in the comments below, what is the biggest lesson you ever learned about setting firm boundaries with family, especially when money was involved?